Discipline is one of those meta skills that have an impact on all areas of your life as a university student. Your grades, personal goals, and overall achievement in life revolves around this. The problem is that most students think it's about toughening up and grinding, but developing discipline is actually much simpler than that, almost magical once you truly understand the science that underlies it. I want to show you the one core principle that underlies any guide on how to be disciplined. And you can personally apply this very flexibly to all of your academic and personal goals. I'm Doji, a productivity academic, and I help university students transform from inconsistent procrastinators to productivity masters. So if that seems interesting, I'd be more than glad to have you on my channel. First off, if your main problem is procrastination, come at masterclass and I will send you my full masterclass on how to rewire procrastination and create a solid productivity system in 3 days, completely free. Now, first off, I want you to throw away any conception you have of the word discipline because the actual underlying driver of discipline has nothing to do with discipline itself. Let me clarify. If you live your life thinking that discipline is something you have to tense up and muster, you'd be living a miserable life and you'd still fail. Most students do live in this cycle of making hyper ambitious plans, try to discipline themselves into doing them, but failing to deliver. So they feel guilty about it. And to redeem that guilt, they make more ambitious plans and promise themselves with more resolve that they'll truly make a break this time. But they fail again, which makes them feel more guilty, repeating the cycle further. This happens on the scale of days up to years, like in my case. They're stuck in this cycle of trying to discipline through hard work, which just isn't how it works. I've personally been stuck in that loop myself for years, so I'm more guilty about this than any of you could be. I call it the doom cycle. Now, listen to this closely because it is truly life-changing. Pursuing your most ambitious goals is thrilling, almost ecstatic, once you master the dynamics of goal achievement. Developing discipline that gets you out of that doom cycle actually has nothing to do with discipline itself, as we said. At core, developing discipline is actually about humility. Now, this might not make any sense, but please let me cook. First off, we need to understand how discipline functions. For that, let's look at two studies. The first is the marshmallow experiment. Simply put, they tested the sense of delayed gratification children have by putting one marshmallow in front of them, and they then told the children that if they could withhold eating it for 10 minutes, they'll be rewarded with another one. Obviously, most children gave in because, well, they're children. But what was interesting was that those who could resist the temptation were the ones who didn't resist the temptation. I'll say that again. The children that did succeed were the ones who were not exerting effort in resisting the marshmallow. They were distracting themselves with something else, singing, playing around, playing with their hands, doing anything else. The children who actively concentrated on resisting the marshmallow lost. The conclusion we can make out of this is that discipline is a tank. It's a depletable resource. That explains why those who used up that tank eventually failed, while those who did not use discipline were actually the ones who succeeded. A similar, much more powerful study was conducted by Roy Baumeister, which is the world's leading researcher on the science of willpower. He actually has a book called just that. It's called Willpower, which is weird. But anyway, in that study, they split people into three groups. The first group was brought into a room, was offered chocolate chip cookies and radishes, and was told to eat the chocolate chip cookies. So they didn't really resist anything. The second group, however, was told to actively resist the chocolate chip cookies and only eat radishes. Now, the third group wasn't offered any food really, so they didn't have to resist anything. Then they offered each an impossible puzzle. The point wasn't to solve the puzzle itself, it was just to see how much they persist in trying to solve it. Essentially, see how much discipline they'd exert. What do you think happened? The radishes group, which was told to actively resist the chocolate chip cookies, lasted for around 8 minutes. Can you guess how much the other groups lasted for? The other two groups lasted for 19 minutes. That's a 235% increase in output just because they didn't have to exert discipline beforehand. Someone might say, well, how did the group that wasn't offered anything at all last as much as the chocolate chip cookies group? Well, neither of them had to exert discipline to resist anything. That's the point. But anyway, the major takeaway from all of that is that discipline was never a static trait. It's a tank. It's a resource that each one of us has, and it's depletable. Discipline is a muscle that fatigues. Stay around till the end, by the way, because I'll show you how to grow that tank and how to grow that muscle. But in light of that, how would humility help me develop discipline? Well, here's the one big concept I want you to have from this video. At core, developing discipline is built upon being humble enough to acknowledge that your discipline is unreliable. That's how it revolves around humility. It's about understanding that the only way to win is to not need to exert discipline, and that's done through a self-binding protocol. A self-binding protocol is a system in which the current you deprives future you from being able to have the choice of exerting discipline. If that doesn't make sense, I want you to tell me, how do you think psychiatrists treat compulsive addicts? Compulsive addicts essentially have no discipline at all. Like, they've lost the ability to exert discipline. They have a tank that's immediately emptied once they're exposed to a trigger, right? So they essentially have zero discipline. Well, the answer to how they treat them is by removing the option of engaging with the addictive substance. This makes sense. It doesn't matter if your tank is empty. You won't need it anyway. For an alcoholic, a self-binding protocol is to always take the route that doesn't have a liquor store. For a cocaine addict, it's to move to a different place in which he doesn't have the option of accessing cocaine, which is exactly what rehab facilities provide, by the way. If such addicts didn't self-bind, their discipline tank would eventually run out, and they'll fall into the same loop again, which is the doom cycle we talked about, remember? Now, I don't want you to think you're too different from these addicts. Again, humility, because you're also an addict. And to develop discipline, you have to bind yourself by eliminating the options of those addictions that you need to exert discipline to resist. You don't want to be the person that has already exerted 2/3 of their discipline tank by the first hour of the day, just resisting IG Reels. Delete the app, switch your smartphone to a dumb phone, commit to the library, change your lifestyle on a micro or a macro scale so radically that you don't need to exert discipline anymore. And then work simply becomes second nature. I want you to answer these questions with a yes or no, giving yourself a point for each yes. 1. Do I know what my discipline leeches are? Do I have them identified? 2. Am I humble enough to understand that future me won't necessarily be able to resist those temptations? And 3. Do I have the humility and courage to eliminate them? Or do I keep submitting to fake rationalizations that I deep down hold on to because I don't want to eliminate them? If your score is 1 or 0, you're cooked. Okay, here's where it gets even crazier. There are ways you can increase your discipline capacity, essentially make that tank bigger. Pair that with a low friction environment, and you've got a permanent discipline multiplier. Essentially, the self-binding protocol with a stronger discipline muscle. Here are the 3 most effective ways to do that, according to Kelly McGonigal, which is the author of the Willpower Instinct. The third one actually has an immediate effect, so stay around. The first one is simply exerting discipline when it sucks. There's actually a region within your brain that's mathematically responsible for discipline. It's called the anterior midcingulate cortex. Research has found that exerting discipline, especially when it sucks, actually strengthens future exertion of discipline by growing this area in size. Someone might say, well, didn't you just tell us we should be working on not needing to exert discipline? Well, yes, as much as possible, but you still need at least a push of discipline every now and then. That helps when accumulated because, again, it strengthens that region of your brain. The second thing is meditation. I fucking hate it and I won't do it ever. It's just annoying, but unfortunately it does help. So 5 to 10 minutes of daily meditation increases blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, improving your ability to pause before acting on impulses. Still won't do it, but worth mentioning. Now, the third technique, which actually has an immediate effect, is the 4 to 6 technique, which is inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6. So a breath that takes 10 seconds total, essentially. Just 60 to 120 seconds of this technique is enough to shift your brain into self-control mode and make you feel more capable of handling a challenge. This is the only known short-term boost to willpower. Finally, again, if your main problem is procrastination, comment masterclass and I will send you my full masterclass on how to rewire procrastination and create a solid productivity system in 3 days, completely free. And that was it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace out.